The Parker Solar Probe becomes the first spacecraft to visit the Sun's atmosphere. Giant cracks push imperilled Antarctic glacier closer to collapse, and NASA sets new date for James Webb Space Telescope launch. I'm Nidhi Kumar and you're watching Science Time, a show that brings to you the best that science offers, from exciting developments in science and technology to futuristic solutions. Let's go on to story number 1. And for the first time, a spacecraft has made contact with the Sun. During a recent flyby, NASA's Parker Solar Probe entered the Sun's atmosphere. In April, the probe became the first known spacecraft to soar into our nearest star's upper atmosphere, known as the corona, where it sampled particles and magnetic fields, according to a statement issued by NASA. Parker left interplanetary space and crossed into solar territory on April 28, 2021, during one of its close encounters with the Sun. While there, the probe took the first measurements of exactly where this boundary, called the Alven critical surface, lies. It was about 13 million kilometers above the Sun's surface, physicists reported at the meeting held online and in New Orleans and in physical review letters on December 14th. The Alven critical surface is important because it marks where packets of plasma can separate from the Sun and become a part of the solar wind, the speedy stream of charged particles that constantly emanates from the Sun. The solar wind and other more dramatic forms of space weather can wreak havoc on Earth satellites and even on life. And scientists want to pinpoint exactly how the wind gets started to better understand how it can impact Earth. The Alven critical surface also may hold the key to one of the biggest solar mysteries: why the Sun's corona, its wispy outer atmosphere, is so much hotter than the Sun's surface. Not only does this milestone provide us with deeper insights into our Sun's evolution and its impacts on our solar system, but everything we learn about our own star also teaches us more about stars in the rest of the universe. And Parker's first passage through the corona, which lasted a few hours, is just one of the many that are planned for the mission, according to NASA. The next flyby is expected to occur in January. Let's move on to story number 2. And 20 years ago, an area of ice thought to weigh almost 500 billion tons dramatically broke off the Antarctic continent and shattered into thousands of icebergs into the Weddell Sea. The 1,255 square mile Larsen B ice shelf was known to be melting fast, but no one had predicted that it would take just 1 month for the 200-meter thick behemoth to completely disintegrate. Glaciologists were shocked as much by the speed as by the scale of the collapse. This week, ice scientists meeting in New Orleans warned that something even more alarming was brewing on the West Antarctic ice sheet, a vast basin of ice on the Antarctic Peninsula. And years of research by teams of British and American researchers showed that great cracks and fissures had opened up both on and underneath the Thwaites Glacier, one of the biggest in the world, and it was feared that parts of it too may fracture and collapse, possibly within 5 years or less. Thwaites makes Larsen B look like an icicle. It is roughly 100 times larger, about the size of Britain, and contains enough water on its own to raise sea levels worldwide by more than half a meter. It contributes about 4% of annual global sea level rise and has been called the most important glacier in the world. Even the Doomsday Glacier. Satellite studies show it is melting far. Thwaites is worrisome, but there are many other great glaciers in Antarctica also retreating, thinning and melting as the southern ocean warms. Many are being held back because Thwaites acts like a cork, blocking their exit to the sea. Should Thwaites fall apart, scientists believe the others would speed up, leading to the collapse of the whole ice sheet and catastrophic global sea level rises of several meters. Whether and how quickly they may collapse are some of the most important questions of the age. Sea levels are rising fast, the annual rate of increase more than doubling from 1.4 mm to 3.6 mm between 2006 and 2015 and accelerating. Should all West Antarctica's glaciers over-collapse, there is no coastal city in the world that would not over time be swamped at ruinous cost to life and economies. And with that, let's move on to story number 3. And NASA has confirmed the upcoming launch of the James Webb Space Telescope at 5:50 p.m. on Indian time on Friday, December 24th. The Webb telescope is the long-awaited successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. The $9.7 billion space telescope has been under development for decades. Its previously announced launch date was December 22, but on December 14, NASA announced a brief delay due to a communication issue between the observatory and the launch vehicle system. That was only the most recent of many delays over Webb's long history. The project began in 1989, was originally expected to deploy the instrument which will be the largest and the most powerful telescope ever to be launched into space in the early 2000s. The Webb telescope was built in the US and transported to its launch site in Kourou in French Guiana this year with a planned date of departure of 18 December. It follows in the footsteps of the legendary Hubble telescope but will be located much further from the Sun. It is hoped it will reveal what the universe looked like even closer to its birth nearly 14 billion years ago. The new telescope is named after the late James E. Webb, who ran the fledgling NASA space agency for much of the 1960s. And with that, this is the wrap of this edition of Science Time. We'll be back with more interesting stories from the world of science next week. Until then, stay tuned to India Science. Namaskar.